The most important decision Kobe Bryant ever made was not to be great. It was to be locked in. Not sometimes. Not when he felt motivated. Not when people were watching. Locked in. No matter what. Because life doesn't care about your talent. The league doesn't care about your potential. And pressure doesn't ask if you're ready. Pressure shows up anyway. Kobe understood something very early in his life. Focus is not something you find. Focus is something you decide. You decide what matters. You decide what gets your energy. You decide what you're willing to ignore. Most people don't struggle because they lack ability. They struggle because their attention is everywhere. Kobe hated that. He hated wasted motion. He hated wasted thoughts. He hated wasted days. Not because he was angry at the world, but because he respected time too much to abuse it. See, everyone wants confidence. Everyone wants mental toughness. Everyone wants to be calm under pressure. But nobody wants to make the decision that creates those things. The decision to show up when it's boring. The decision to work when no one claps. The decision to stay disciplined when distraction is easier. Kobe didn't wake up obsessed with winning championships. He woke up obsessed with preparation. Because when you prepare deeply enough, focus becomes automatic. You don't need hype. You don't need noise. You don't need external motivation. You're already there. Most people wait to feel focused before they act. Kobe acted and let focus catch up. He understood that emotions are unreliable, but habits are not. You can't control how you feel when you wake up, but you can control whether you lace up your shoes. You can't control how loud the crowd is, but you can control whether your mind stays quiet. And that quiet, that internal silence, that's where dominance lives. Kobe wasn't distracted because he didn't allow himself to be. He didn't negotiate with excuses. He didn't romanticize comfort. He didn't lie to himself about effort. If he missed a shot, he didn't complain. He studied it. If he lost a game, he didn't sulk. He dissected it. Every moment was information. Every failure was feedback. That level of focus doesn't come from confidence. It comes from honesty. Brutal honesty. Most people say they want to be great, but they still protect their ego. Kobe protected the work. And here's the part people don't like to hear. Focus requires sacrifice. Real focus demands that something in your life must die. Distractions, old identities, comfort, approval. Kobe didn't care if you understood him. He cared if he understood himself. Because once you're clear on who you are and what you're chasing, the noise disappears. You stop comparing. You stop explaining. You stop hesitating. You move relentlessly. This wasn't arrogance. It was alignment. His mind, his actions, and his purpose were pointed in the same direction. And when that happens, focus becomes unbreakable. Not because life gets easier, but because you get sharper. This mindset wasn't built overnight. It was built through repetition, through routine, through doing the same simple things with extraordinary consistency. And that's where everything changes. Focus isn't built when life is loud. It's built when no one is watching. Kobe Bryant understood that solitude wasn't a weakness. It was an advantage. While others needed music, hype, or validation, he needed silence, because silence exposes the truth. In silence, there's no crowd to impress, no opponent to blame, no narrative to hide behind. Just you and the work. That's where Kobe lived. Not because he loved pain, but because pain removed distractions. Discipline to Kobe was not about force. It was about respect. Respect for the craft. respect for the process, respect for the details everyone else ignored. He didn't train to feel good. He trained to be ready. And readiness has a cost. It costs sleep. It costs comfort. It costs the version of you that wants shortcuts. Most people want balance. Kobe wanted precision. He didn't ask, "Do I feel like training today?" He asked, "What does the situation require?" Because discipline isn't emotional, it's situational. If the answer was more reps, he stayed. If the answer was film, he studied. If the answer was rest, he recovered. No drama, no negotiation. That's the difference. Most people argue with reality. Kobe adjusted to it. He didn't confuse motivation with commitment. Motivation is loud. Commitment is quiet. Motivation comes and goes. Commitment stays when motivation disappears. That's why Kobe could train at hours most people wouldn't even consider. Not because he was superhuman, but because he removed friction. He structured his life so discipline was easier than distraction. When your routine is clear, your focus doesn't have to work hard. It just follows the system. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Unbreakable focus requires isolation at times. Not loneliness, intentional separation. Separation from opinions. Separation from comparison. Separation from unnecessary noise. Kobe didn't hate people. He just refused to let them dilute his purpose. While others were chasing approval, he was sharpening his edge. And that edge wasn't physical. It was mental. He trained his mind to stay present when the body wanted relief. He trained himself to finish when the instinct was to coast. That's why pressure didn't shake him. Pressure reveals what you've rehearsed. And Kobe rehearsed discomfort. Again, and again, and again. Not because it was glamorous, but because it was effective. Discipline built the floor, and focus built the ceiling. And once both were in place, performance became inevitable. Not guaranteed, but inevitable. Because when you remove excuses, results have nowhere to hide. If you want, I can continue with part 3, where we go into Kobe's relationship with failure, how he used losses to sharpen focus instead of breaking confidence, and how the Mamba mentality turns setbacks into fuel. Most people fear failure because they personalize it. They let a bad performance define them. They let one loss rewrite the story in their head. Kobe Bryant never did that. To him, failure wasn't an identity. It was information. Cold, precise, useful. When Kobe missed a shot, he didn't say, "I'm not good enough." He asked, "Was my footwork late? Was my release rushed? Did I read the defender wrong?" Emotion was removed from the equation. That's why his focus didn't break under pressure. He wasn't attached to outcomes. He was attached to execution. Most people collapse mentally because they chase results. Kobe chased standards. And standards don't panic. Standards don't flinch when things go wrong. They correct. That's the difference. A loss didn't damage his confidence because his confidence wasn't built on winning. It was built on preparation. When you know you've done the work, failure loses its power over you. It can hurt, but it can't control you. Kobe welcomed that pain, not emotionally, strategically. Because pain exposes gaps. And gaps show you exactly where to focus next. That's why, after his worst games, he didn't escape. He leaned in. He watched the film others avoided. He replayed the moments that embarrassed him. He slowed them down until they made sense. Most people run from discomfort. Kobe studied it. That's how failure sharpened his focus instead of shattering it. He didn't need reassurance. He needed clarity. And clarity comes from accountability. No blaming teammates, no blaming refs, no blaming circumstances. Just one question: what do I control? And the moment you ask that question, focus returns. Because focus lives inside responsibility. You lose focus when you feel powerless. You regain it when you take ownership. That's why Kobe could take the last shot without fear. Not because he believed he would always make it, but because he trusted his process either way. He knew the outcome wouldn't define him. The work already had. That mindset removes hesitation, and hesitation is the real enemy. Fear doesn't come from pressure. Fear comes from uncertainty. Kobe eliminated uncertainty through repetition, through failure, through correction, through obsession with detail. So when the moment arrived, his mind didn't search for confidence. It defaulted to habit. That's unbreakable focus, not emotional courage, trained certainty. If you want, we can move into part 4, where we cover how Kobe used obsession without burnout, the difference between unhealthy grind and deliberate intensity, and how he sustained focus over an entire career, not just moments. People love to say Kobe Bryant was obsessed. They say it like it was reckless, like it was unhealthy, like it was something to admire, but not to copy. They misunderstand what obsession actually looked like. Kobe wasn't obsessed with working nonstop. He was obsessed with getting better on purpose. There's a difference. Burnout doesn't come from intensity. It comes from meaningless effort. It comes from grinding without clarity, from working hard with no direction. Kobe avoided burnout because everything he did had intent. Every workout had a focus. Every drill had a reason. Every film session had a question it was trying to answer. He didn't just train longer, he trained sharper. That sharpened focus protected his energy. Most people exhaust themselves because their attention is scattered. They're busy, but not aligned. Kobe's attention was narrow, almost ruthless. When it was time to work, nothing else existed. And when it was time to recover, he recovered with the same seriousness. Recovery wasn't weakness, it was strategy. He understood that sustainability was part of dominance, that focus isn't about being on all the time. It's about knowing when to turn it on fully. That's why he could maintain intensity over years, not weeks. He didn't chase adrenaline, he chased mastery. Adrenaline burns fast, mastery compounds, and mastery requires patience. Patience to repeat the basics. Patience to stay locked in when progress is invisible. Patience to trust that small improvements accumulate. Kobe didn't need novelty. He needed precision. The same footwork, the same shots, the same angles, over and over. Not because he was stuck, but because he was refining. That's what obsession looked like. Not chaos, control. And here's the truth most people miss. Focus is draining only when you're fighting yourself. When your values and your actions are misaligned, every effort feels heavy. Kobe didn't fight himself. He chose his path, then removed doubt. Once the decision was made, focus became natural. There was no inner debate, no second guessing, just execution. That mental clarity is what preserved his energy. It's not the work that burns you out. It's indecision. It's distraction. It's trying to be two different people at once. Kobe was one person, one direction, one standard, and that unity of purpose is what allowed him to go deeper without breaking. If you want to complete the arc, we can move into part 5, final, where we bring everything together. Focus, discipline, failure, and obsession, the full Mamba Mentality framework. And how this mindset applies beyond basketball to life, business, and identity. At the end of the day, Kobe Bryant didn't chase greatness. He defined it. Not by what he said, but by what he refused to compromise. Focus, discipline, accountability, intent. These weren't tools he used when it was convenient. They were the rules he lived by. That's the part people miss. The Mamba mentality was never about basketball. Basketball was just the arena. The mindset was the point. Kobe understood that once you build unbreakable focus in one area, it transfers everywhere. How you train is how you prepare. How you prepare is how you perform. And how you perform is how you live. There was no separation. That's why his presence felt different. When he walked into a gym, people felt it. Not because he demanded attention, but because his standards were immovable. He didn't need to talk about focus. You could see it in how he warmed up, in how he listened, in how he responded to pressure. He had already decided who he was, and once that decision is made, distractions lose their grip. Comparison fades, noise becomes irrelevant, fear loses leverage, because you're no longer asking, "Am I good enough?" You're asking, "Did I meet my standard?" That question changes everything. It puts the responsibility back in your hands. No excuses, no waiting, no outsourcing belief, just action. Relentless, intentional action. Kobe didn't believe in motivation. He believed in alignment. When your goals align with your values, you don't need to be pushed. You're pulled. Pulled by purpose. Pulled by identity. Pulled by the version of yourself you've already committed to becoming. That's the real secret. Unbreakable focus isn't built by trying harder. It's built by deciding once who you are, and then showing up as that person every single day. No matter the outcome, no matter the applause, no matter the pressure. That's what Kobe did. And that's why his legacy was never just about championships. It was about standards. Standards that didn't bend. Standards that didn't negotiate. Standards that turned focus into a weapon. And once you build that, nothing can take it from you.